everyone and welcome. I have with me a very large 3-month-old Doberman here, and she's one that we bred ourselves. So we've got her mother. So yeah, even though she's 3 months old, they have all of the power that you'd expect from a Doberman. And today we're going to be doing some Q&A, so we're going to answer some questions that you've been sending in to us. So we've got some really good questions here today, really excited about this one. So first question is, what age do Dobermans usually calm down? Most of them start to settle around 2 to 3 years old. Training and routine really make a huge difference, and the females calm down a lot earlier than the males. So the females around about 2 years old, with the males they don't really calm down until they're at least 3 years old. So yeah, you've got to really think about if you want a calm one or one that's going to be a bit more high energy and a little bit more mature for longer, in which case that'll be the males. When we speak to people, because we breed Dobermans, so we get a lot of people asking us about Dobermans, and everybody seems to want a male, but they have to do that like extra year of like high energy for the males, because they just mature slow. And it's the same with like different species as well. It's not just dogs, it's also the same with humans. So the other question we've got here is, European or American Dobermans better for families? I'd say both can be great. The European lines tend to be more like work driven. So if you're looking for a protection dog, working line, a dog that's really gonna have a job. And I like the European ones for that. They do need more structure. So it does come down to breeding and training more than the actual type. Let's see what other questions we have. Oh, I like this one. Do untrained Dobermans become aggressive? Not aggressive, but they can become more anxious, more reactive or pushy. But if you train them early, that prevents like 99% of the issue. So that really does help. Biggest mistake first time Doberman owners make. Oh, this is a good one. Letting the puppy be in charge, because for those of you who know Dobermans, they need like really calm, consistent leadership from day one. So the people who tend to do best tend to have really type A personalities, and that tends to work a lot better with Dobermans, because they need routine, they need structure, they need consistency. If you're the type of person that has the same schedule every day, you wake up at the same time, then like life would be a lot easier for you and the dog, because the dog can kind of get a little bit stressed if it doesn't know what's happening from day to day. But when you have that consistent routine, and the dog kind of feels comfortable in like knowing what's about to happen and what comes next. And consistency is really important, especially with Dobermans. Like sometimes when we train a Doberman on something, it knows it, and then on another occasion it could not be like following that command or something, and you got to be consistent. You can't just like let it slide, because that's a slippery slope. You let it slide once, then you like get onto like a pattern where that dog might not listen to you at all. If it knows that it cannot listen to you, and it can, you know, things will still be as normal, then that can really develop into a pattern. One of the examples is like recall. You know, if you are going to give a dog command, make sure you've got like the time to follow it through, because if the dog doesn't listen, you can't just say, well, I don't have the time for this. You really have to follow it through, because even that one or two examples, the dog can learn that it doesn't have to listen. So consistency is huge, very important. See if we've got a few more questions. How much exercise do they need daily? I get this a lot, especially when people are coming to like look at puppies from us. And yeah, they do need one and a half to 2 hours of exercise a day. However, I will state that you don't have to just do 1 or 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours of walking a day. It can be some walking and some mental exercise, and a lot of people will tell you that mental exercise is actually far superior to physical exercise. So we have pretty much every single type of Doberman toy, mental stimulation you can think of. We've got puzzles, we've got lick mats, we've got sprig poles, we've got you know, different ball games that they can play. So they've got a ton of toys, ton of exercise, and mental stimulation can tire them out a lot more than physical. Take them to a park and let them run around for 2 hours compared to, you know, an hour of walking and an hour of mental exercise. You're going to get a more tired puppy or dog with the mental stimulation. So yeah, don't underestimate the power of mental stimulation. And a lot of people who don't have time for 2 hours of walking a day, that's fine, that's not expected. I'd say, you know, split it between mental and physical exercise, because as you know, if you don't you know, give them a job to do, they're gonna find their own job, and sometimes that's quite destructive. So as you just saw, I just let the puppy go away. She's you know, you don't leave an unpuppy don't leave a puppy free reign of the house, but like the reason why I can like pay attention here and not there is because she's got like a rawhide toy which is going to last her at least half an hour. They're expensive, but I think, you know, it's one of those other mental stimulations I give them, so it like stimulates them mentally, and also she's chewing, and I love it. Let's see what other questions we have. Do they grow out of separation anxiety? Yeah, see, yeah, a lot of Doberman owners will talk to you about separation anxiety, because Dobermans are prone to separation anxiety as a breed. You will hear some people say, you know, it's hard for a Doberman not to get separation anxiety, because for those of you who know, as a breed, they really bond closely, especially to one owner, and we don't recommend them like for rehoming unless it's absolutely necessary. But it's not usually something that actually happens. That's actually a myth. If you teach them through thorough conditioning, it's something they outgrow. One of the tricks that a Doberman owner taught me is that if you do have a puppy, don't leave it for an hour, like leave it for like 5 minutes at first and come back, and then 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and then just keep showing it that yes, I'm going to come back. But if you leave it for too long, it might start to, you know, get a bit stressed, and then that's, you know, what could lead to separation anxiety. So, you know, gradually like increase the amount of time you do leave it if you do have to leave the puppy. Oh, we get a lot of questions about like males versus females, and I've heard like so many myths, it's hard to keep up, but I'm just like going on the facts today, dispelling all the myths. And this question we've got is, are females more affectionate than males? Many say yes, females can be more people focused, but personality can vary on line and upbringing. Males tend to be more protective of their house, whereas females will be protective in the house and outdoors, which is very common across all breeds. But yeah, females and males do have slight differences in personality. The males obviously do mature a lot slower, and then the females mature, you know, considerably faster. Let's see what other questions we have. When should a Doberman start obedience training? Immediately. They can start as early as 8 weeks. Yeah, I'd say start training the day they arrive, because we actually breed Dobermans, we get them from birth. So when people also like have us train their Dobermans, sometimes even before they leave at 8 weeks. So yeah, we've been training Dobermans from 4 weeks. They open their eyes from 3 weeks, and by 3 weeks they're starting to walk. So yeah, by 4 weeks we're getting them to do some like basic training. They're not going to be doing advanced training, but you know, your basic sit. You know, we have 4-week-old Dobermans, like sitting, stay, you know, your really basic commands. That's excellent. And you get even more obedient dogs the earlier you start. Like the puppy you just saw, like we've had her from birth, so she's been training like from birth. And people always comment when they come around and see our puppies how like calm and how calm they are for puppies. They've seen other litters and like it's a little bit crazy, but it's almost like what you teach them. Like we don't like reinforce when they're like, you know, jumping around. Like if we're going to give them food and they're like jumping everywhere, we kind of wait for them to be calm, and then we give them that. So if that's all they've ever known, then they know, okay, the food's here, I'm going to be calm, and then it'll be given to me. So they're not getting that reinforcement of like certain negative behaviors. But yeah, I appreciate for a lot of people, they can't start training puppies from 8 weeks unless their breeder is also a trainer, which is useful. In which case, yeah, I say, yeah, the sooner the better. Oh, I like this question. Raw versus kibble. Now, I think this is really important, not just because of like preferences, but like I feel like health comes into it, and there have been some studies that have shown that, you know, dogs on a certain diet can live longer. So I would say both can work, but what matters is quality and consistency and what your dog tolerates well. But yeah, I think they have shown that some of the dogs that live the longest have a certain diet. And one of the things they found is that, yes, people say Dobermans live to around 12 and 13, and most people we speak to, because obviously, like being breeders, a lot of people come to us after their dogs have passed away, and usually it's around that 12, 13 years old is very common. However, that wasn't always the case. You know, Dobermans used to live till 18 years old, and wouldn't that be fantastic if you could have your dog for another 6 years without, you know, having to, you know, for some people there'll always be Doberman owners, so once their Doberman passes away, they're looking for another Doberman. But wouldn't it be great if they could have, like, you know, 2 Dobermans in 30 years rather than having, you know, 3, for example? So yeah, I'd say, like, definitely do your research on diet. There are diets that have proven that studies have proven that dogs live longer on those diets, so I would focus on that diet. Unfortunately, it's not the kibble that the dogs live longest on. Kibble, especially a lot of store-bought kibbles, it's not always the good stuff that's in there. Raw diets are great, wet food's good. And you think about like how a dog would live in the wild, they're not going to be eating kibble, they're going to be eating more like raw food, so it does mimic how they would be in the wild. And because we do a lot of research on this, we know that when dogs are in the wild, they don't get their food handed to them on a plate every day. They kind of have to go and like search it out and find it in different places. And we do that actually, and we don't always give the dog like a bowl, here you go, here's your meal. Sometimes we turn it into a mental stimulation where we like spread like food all around the house, and the dog has to go and find it as it would do in the wild. See, that's the double bonus, because it's mental stimulation and it does mimic how the dog would be in the wild, which makes them kind of live a little bit longer. And yeah, that's a great mental stimulation. It costs nothing. You could do it with kibble, and it takes up, you know, a good amount of time. When you've got a puppy, you know, you have to keep them entertained, like especially a Doberman puppy, pretty much all day. So that's a great little mental stimulation, which don't feel like you have to give your dog treats, because, you know, we used to spend a lot of money on treats, and we realized that kibble, especially with Dobermans, is exactly the same effect. So yeah, you can use kibble as treats, and a lot of you know, trainers do that. And the other thing is, I've seen, you know, we do it sometimes and other people do, is they use all of their dog's food as like a training opportunity. So if you're giving the kibble as if it were treats, you can, like, you know, have it do little tasks in exchange for kibble, and that way it's getting mental stimulation as well as, you know, having food in a bit more of an interesting way. So let's see what other questions we've got. She's still going really well on the rawhide, very, very mentally stimulating. This question was one that we kind of ran into when we first got a Doberman, in that pulling on a lead. See, prior to Dobermans, we had small dogs, so pulling on a lead wasn't too much of an issue. But with a big dog, you know, and pulling on a lead, you know, it's even more of a problem when they're older. So, you know, you've got to reinforce the habits that you want when they're older. So even as a puppy, pulling on a lead might not, you know, have you falling over, but as a fully grown dog at its full weight, pulling on a lead is quite a significant issue. So the question is, how do I stop pulling on the lead? I would say, yeah, so start with loose lead training. There's lots of different techniques. You'll see different trainers use different techniques. I can't say that we found one works better than the other, but I'd say just the principle of don't allow your dog to pull you should be quite consistent. Loose lead training, I think the one you hear most often is if the dog starts pulling and there's tension in the lead, then stop and wait for the dog to adjust its behavior, then you can start again. You know, it can take hours. You really need a lot of patience for it, and eventually you get there. It might take you an hour just to reinforce to the dog that every time it pulls, you're going to stop. So yeah, it's not physical strength, it's about like loose lead training and just teaching the dog that pulling gets no progress. And yeah, I would say that's a really important thing to teach, especially when the dog is young, because you don't want a fully grown, larger breed pulling you. Okay, we've got a few more questions here now. Do Dobermans get along with other dogs? I can test for this. We have multiple Dobermans and they get along fantastically if socialized correctly, but with all dogs you do need to socialize them around other dogs, otherwise they can be reactive. And they are naturally selective, so controlled introductions are important. I wouldn't introduce them to dogs you don't know their temperament, because one negative interaction can kind of not be a good way to start off. So I'd start in there's parks where it's on lead parks, so we start off a puppy in a park where it's on lead, or if friendly dogs, that's great. Other puppies, great. But yeah, once your puppy's had all its vaccinations and is ready to be amongst other dogs, then yeah, that shouldn't be delayed. There is a critical socialization point, after which it's quite it's a lot more difficult to expose a dog to new things after that critical socialization point, but that's for another topic. I like this question. What is the best age to bring a puppy home? I'd say 8 weeks. It's great for bonding and the correct developmental stages. By that point they're fully weaned from their mother, they're able to pick up commands and yeah, bond with their new family. Because obviously most puppies leave us at 8 weeks, and at 8 weeks we see them a lot more willing to go with their new family. The only time I've seen resistance is when it was a puppy that was almost 4 months old. It just didn't want to leave. It was already bonded. So we only did that once, and then after that we've always made sure all of our puppies are rehomed by the time they're 8 to 10 weeks. Yeah, within that window all of our puppies have been rehomed. And usually it's not because they still don't have a home, it's because their owners aren't ready to pick them up for various reasons. But yeah, Dobermans, the pedigree that we breed, they go very quickly. Okay, I just got a couple more questions that we've got here. Are cropped ears cruel? This is probably one of the biggest debates in the Doberman community. And yeah, it is illegal in the UK and most of the EU now. I think all of the EU potentially. Some countries consider it tradition. I think there are some countries in I think it's Australia, New Zealand. It's also illegal there. Yeah, some people consider it tradition. Some people do like it. Even in the UK, we have people tell us fairly frequently they do like the look, but they understand it's illegal. And the dogs do function perfectly with their natural ears. Size is a question we get a lot. So this question here is, how big are adult female Dobermans? Yeah, the females are smaller than the males. The males have much bigger chests and they're more physically imposing, which is probably one of the other reasons why people like the males. So yeah, around 26 to 30 kilograms, and their neck is around 14 to 16 inches, but it does vary by genetics. Some breeders do breed them so they're even bigger and more imposing. They'll breed the biggest with the biggest to get these supersized dogs. Okay, a couple more questions. Do Dobermans protect naturally or need training? I love this question. Yes, Dobermans are the only breed that will naturally protect their owner without any training, and I could tell you stories all day long about times when Dobermans have protected their owners. And when you have a Doberman, people will cross over the road to speak to you, because it's not often you see Doberman owners, and it's such a fascinating little community. So we're always, I don't say we're always chatting with Doberman owners, but when we do see a Doberman owner, it's always a good little conversation. But yes, they have they do naturally protect their owners. They're naturally alert and they guard. But I'd say proper training will turn that instinct into safe behavior. Like you want to know they'll consistently react in a certain way in a certain situation. And Dobermans are like so intelligent. They're not just gonna like bite someone, or like German Shepherds bite first, ask questions later. Like Dobermans aren't going to do that. You see them assessing and like deciding whether or not, but then there are other situations where they go, yes, this is definitely a situation, and they'll like jump into action. I can't move on without telling this. This is my favorite story. I've heard a lot of stories about Dobermans protecting their owners. This is my favorite one. Living in London, there was a Brazilian lady who used to live in my neighborhood. She used to have a Doberman. It was a female Doberman, and she lived in Brazil, loved the dog so much she brought it to London with her. But when she was in Brazil, she said she talked about this time when she was, you know, going down the street, going, I'd say shopping or something, and she said that she'd never seen her dog bark at anyone ever, only 2 times in her life, and this was the first time. So she's walking down the street and this man is there, and the Doberman just jumps up on him and starts barking at him incessantly, and she was really embarrassed. She like told the dog to come down, and she just apologized to the man, and she went on her way. On her way back, she saw the same man robbing an old lady at gunpoint. And when the man saw her and the dog again, he got scared and he ran off. And the old lady was like so petrified. She was so scared she didn't even want to leave. And she asked the lady with her Doberman if she could walk her home. So she walked this old lady home. But I was just like so amazed at that story, like how the dog had the instinct to know that this man had a gun. Well, probably didn't know the man had a gun, but the dog sensed that something wasn't right. The dog sensed that this person was suspicious, and that instinct is just so incredible, like unbelievable. And yeah, that story is probably one of the most fascinating stories. But I find that personally, if I react, the dog didn't react. Like if I like even gasp, or like heaven forbid I should scream, like the dog's gonna jump into action and see what's going on. So yeah, very good at picking up on whether the owners, I mean, all dogs pick up really well on the owners, but you know, I have other breeds of dogs. If I was scared, or you know, they're not gonna jump into action like the Doberman has. So yeah, very good natural protection instinct. That's literally what they were bred for. Yeah, enough about these stories. I've got a final few questions. I can't, unfortunately, I'll try and do a part 2 where I answer some more of your questions, because we, like, as you can imagine, like we breed Dobermans. We don't heavily breed them, but when we do get like people coming to look at Dobermans, we get a huge amount of questions. So we're used to these questions, know too much about Dobermans. I'm a little bit too well informed about Dobermans. Cost of owning a Doberman. A lot of people ask me how much. I've had a lot of variations of this question. I've had somebody ask me how much does insurance cost for a Doberman. Well, how much is car insurance? It really depends on a lot of factors. But this question's a stronger question. It's what is the cost of owning a Doberman in the UK? I mean, I'd say obviously it can vary from country to country, but I'm specifically in the UK. I'd say, yeah, 100 to 200 a month. Insurance will be more for a Doberman than another breed. Yeah, a lot more. Can depend on age as well. But yeah, you've got to, like, a lot of that would consist of insurance, food, veterinary bills. See, Dobermans, they have, genetically, the breed has some heart issues and so on. So you might want to get your dog checked, you know, for different things. Okay, this question, how to prepare to bring a puppy home. We get a lot of this question, you know, being that we probably have about like 12 or more puppies a year, sometimes 20 puppies a year. And yeah, I'd say puppy proof. Yeah, puppy proof your home. Just imagine like anything that's on the floor, the dog's going to want to explore it, chew on it. It could be shoes, it could be, yeah, I just puppy proof the house as much as you can. Set up a crate. I did once have this owner in the early days when we first started, you know, we first started breeding, somebody insisting they didn't want a crate. And I didn't really like challenge it, but in retrospect I probably should have explained why they should have had a crate for a Doberman as opposed to another dog, because they'd had another dog, I think it was a Labrador before, it didn't need a crate. Fine. Dobermans are different. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say my Doberman ate my couch. A Labrador's probably not going to eat your couch. A Doberman, yeah, a young Doberman will probably like chew on your couch. You would, yeah, you'd probably want to like crate a Doberman. I wouldn't advise not getting a crate. I wouldn't leave a Doberman a puppy for even a day, even a few hours without being in a crate, because one, yes, you want to protect your things, but also you want to protect the Doberman, the puppy. What if it eats something that, or chews something that could make it very ill? So yeah, I'd say it's very wise and definitely recommended to have a crate for a Doberman, absolutely. Yeah, I'd just say definitely choose a feeding spot and feeding time, and have a consistent routine for them. So think about that even before you get the Doberman. Sometimes we give people the existing routine that we have them on, even as young puppies. We have them on a structured feeding schedule, and if they go to the new home on the same feeding schedule, great, even better. And sometimes they change it up, which just means a little bit more adjustment, but that's one of the joys of bringing a Doberman home. Okay, just 2 more questions because I realise we're running out of time. Do Dobermans shed a lot? Oh, this question is quite divisive because it's like yes and no. A lot of people like short-haired puppies or dogs because they don't shed a lot, like us too. That's one of the reasons why I would prefer a Doberman over a German Shepherd. But just because they're short-haired doesn't mean they don't shed a lot. However, they'd shed more than you'd expect. However, if you're like grooming and like, removing those loose hairs with like a brush, then the shedding is coming out on the brush. But when people don't do that, they find it, like almost carpeting their house. So they shed, but just like with human hair, we shed hair, but we take it out using a brush, so the hair's on the brush rather than all over the floor. And then the same with a Doberman, like when you're brushing it, you're not going to get as much hair around your house than if you're not brushing it. So yes, they do shed, but it's not an issue if you are brushing it so much. And yes, they shed year round with season changes, and they do their coat does change. What to look for in a reputable breeder? Definitely health testing. We would never get a puppy that wasn't health tested. I have had people come to me and say our Doberman passed away from heart disease. Most common one I hear is DCM, and the most common age is around 3 years old, and none of them had health tested dogs. I've never heard someone with a health tested dog say our Doberman passed away. It's the chances of it is so infinitesimally small. Yeah, it's probably a fraction of a percent. But yeah, I've had people come to us and they're obsessed with health testing, but it's almost like closing the gate once the horse has already gone through. Don't look at the cost of the Doberman, look at whether it's health tested. Yes, you will find lower priced Dobermans that aren't health tested, but health testing is expensive, and I think it's a false economy to save $500 on a dog that isn't health tested, which passes away at the age of 3, rather than getting a dog that will live a long full life that's been health tested. So false economy. I definitely say health testing is the number one. Look for transparency. If the breeder can support you, that's great. We always get people following up with us on their puppies, showing us pictures, seeing how they're doing. And yeah, and if the breeder is doing some like socialization, that's great as well, because early socialization is very important. Okay, I think we've just got one more question we can squeeze in. I will do a part 2 because there's a million questions about Dobermans. You'll never know everything, but the more you know, the better. Can full-time workers own a Doberman? I'd say yes, if you can provide like the right structure and support. Daycare, training, walkers, they're all great. So yes, you can have a full-time job. One of the other things is you're getting a second Doberman. Like we did a lot when we first had one Doberman, but having a second Doberman is just so much playtime. Like we don't have to do as much stimulation as we did when we just had one, because they just play together so much. They nurture each other, so it's another really great stimulation thing. And Dobermans do work well in pairs. I've seen people do like protection training in pairs as well, so they can really coordinate. but yeah, like a second Doberman can provide a lot of stimulation, and also it's almost like the older Doberman can kind of like train the younger ones in the way that, you know, certain ways that an older dog will, you know, correct is the right word I'm looking for. They'll correct a younger dog. So it's like a small proportion of the training there as well. So I'd say that's the other one. I think that's all we've got time for today. Yeah, that rawhide treat I gave isn't even like 50% finished, so I think that was half an hour's worth of mental stimulation. Puppy totally silent, totally calm. Great example of how you can keep a young dog entertained. Yeah, that's all we've got time for today. We have got a lot of questions. I couldn't answer them all, but do keep sending in your questions, and I will do a part 2, and I'll try and answer all of your questions. Even if it's a question you can't quite find the answer to online, like I know Dobermans in and out. I'm with them all day, every day for God knows how many years. So yeah, definitely I'll ask me, and I'll answer your question. And I do base it on like fact rather than myth. Like I base it on like, you know, sort of real life and studies and so on. So yeah, definitely drop your questions, and I will always try to answer them. So yeah, stay tuned, follow us and subscribe, because there will be a part 2. I do post a lot of information on Dobermans, as you probably can see, and really good stuff as well. So definitely check that out, and I'll be seeing you soon. Thank you and goodbye.